Hello, welcome back to the Off-Grid family. Today I'm going to take you guys to Wookey Hole Caves in Somerset. I have been there a million times as a child. All my memories are filled with sunny days, picnics and the caves when we could afford it, or sneaking in through the back to go to the penny arcades when we couldn't afford it. I love the place. It's got a very, very nostalgic place in my heart, and we had the chance to go there again. So we decided we'd take you guys along with us and record what we could. I spoke to the tour guide who was there and she was fine with me recording her and etc. But I just thought I'd take you along to show you what it is. But I'd highly recommend going. It is such a atmospheric place that you can't get on a camera. You know what I mean? If you're ever in the area, I highly recommend it.
Gotta go. It's not even blowing. Come on.
Alright.
£2.
George, it's $1.49, you've already snapped it. You look like a villager off Minecraft.
No, you don't. I'm now going to tell you a bit about our caves. So our cave is around 1 million years old, which is quite young for a cave. So some caves can get up to 12 million years old. And they're all formed by water. So when it rains and when the rivers come through this area over hundreds of thousands of years, those little water droplets will trickle into the cracks in the ground. And the pressure from all of this water trying to push through makes those cracks bigger and bigger and bigger, creating the caves that we're in now. So where we're standing used to be an ancient river, and the entrance that we came in through used to be an ancient waterfall down into the valley. Nowadays it's much, much drier, but it's left us with these massive chambers still. Our caves are mostly made of the same rock. It's called dolomitic conglomerate rock, which is a fancy geology term for lots of little bits of rock very tightly packed together. You can see that up here where this light is, all those little bits of rock all pressed together. Because of this, it often is given the nickname pudding stone. Not because it tastes great. Someone had given it a lick a couple of weeks ago, said it did not taste very good. So don't go licking the rocks, because that's not why they're called pudding stones. They're called pudding stones because little rocks look like fruits in a fruit cake, supposedly. But it's a very, very sturdy rock, so it's a great place for animals to live. We've had some cave hyenas who've lived down here, some cave bears, some cave lions, some goats, some humans, and then in the valley some woolly mammoths and some woolly rhinoceroses. So all sorts of different animals. A long, long time ago. In fact, where we're standing used to be called the goat herd. Nowadays we don't have any goats here, but the reason it was named this is because in 1912, when the archaeologist Herbert Balch came to excavate this chamber, he would have come through the original entrance all the way up there, down these rocks, only to find masses and masses of goat poo everywhere. There was goat poo all over this floor. That's why it's called the goat herd. Nowadays, we've shoveled out all of this goat poo and it belongs to Wells Museum because they really wanted it for some reason. But in amongst this goat poo were some very interesting finds, one of which was the skeleton of a woman with an alabaster ball, which is a bit like a crystal ball. So when they found this woman, they believed that they found a woman with magical powers. They went back out to the village and they asked who was the woman who lived in the caves. And the people in the village said that's the witch of Wookey Hole. And this is her story. So once upon a time, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, supposedly there was a woman who lived in these caves right where we're standing. And the people who lived in the village believed that she was a witch, so they would blame her for everything that went wrong. Every time the crops failed, she'd be to blame. Every time the water ran out, she'd be to blame. Every time the Wi-Fi went out, she'd be to blame. And so on and so on. Every little problem the villagers had would be blamed on the poor woman who lived in the caves. Until one day, there we go. And so the people in the village did not like this woman very much. They blamed her for everything that went wrong. Until one day they'd had enough. and they decided to band together to get rid of the witch. They brought in a monk called Father Bernard, and he came in to get rid of the witch with his holy powers. He came all the way into the caves, and he had a chat with the witch where we are now. And he told her, "Witch, you gotta go." She did not take too kindly to this and started running about in anger. And she decided to flee. She went that way. This entrance into the cave is known as Hell's Ladder, because the people who lived in the village believed that this was an entrance into hell itself. So before Father Bernard left, he was given one word of warning by the village people. They said, absolutely under no circumstances should you follow the witch if she goes down Hell's Ladder, because if you were to follow her, he would never come back, especially not on a Friday. Unfortunately, he ignored this advice and decided to chase her down there to finish his job. And if we're feeling brave enough, that's where we're going to head now for the next part of the tour. So if you'd like to follow me, we're going to head down these stairs. So I'm hoping most of us have made it down Hell's Ladder. Sometimes we lose a couple people. But we're now in the first chamber of the caves. This is known as the Witch's Kitchen Chamber, and it's where the story continues. So Father Bernard chases the witch down Hell's Ladder. He has only brought 3 things with him to get rid of the witch. He is not prepared in the slightest for this. He brings his candle, his Bible, and his drinking cup. Unfortunately, the stairs don't exist at this time, so when he's racing down here, he takes a slightly different route. Where this orange rope is, he falls through the hole onto the beach. His candle goes out, leaving him in darkness down here with the witch. The only sounds he can hear are the sounds of the water moving through the river. So he hatches a plan. He decides to collect some of this water in his drinking cup. Then he uses his Bible to bless the water and turn it into holy water, because he believes that holy water could protect you from witch curses. He put this in practice and started to sprinkle around the holy water when he heard a scream, and everything went quiet. And when he got his candle working again, he was confronted with something very scary. The face of the witch turned to stone forever. Now, this is where the witch turned to stone. You will have to use your imagination a bit here. But this is her head. I'm going to point out the features, so bear with. That's an eyebrow right there. Below it's one eye. Just to the right is the little nose. Down here are some very large teeth. And a bit of dribble. Just hanging over the head. So supposedly, this is where she was turned to stone. But in the story, she also has a companion. Does anyone know what pet the witch would normally have? A cat, yes.
That's what that is. Then.
Unfortunately, this witch was very unorthodox because cats don't like water very much and it's a very wet place to be. She had a dog instead. Her dog is all just down here. He, at a similar end, was also turned to stone. Right behind you where this blue light is, that little lump of rock is known as Dougal, the witch's dog. Now, we did some tests on Dougal a few years back, and we do believe that he is a Rockweiler. No, not my joke, someone else's, but that is where the witch's story ends. But it'd be a very, very short tour if I left you down here just with the witch story, so I am going to show you a few more things. Starting with 100,000 years, and it's one of the largest ones we have, but most of them aren't this size. Usually, they will sort of get to a size more like this one down here. This is called St. Michael's Mount stalagmite. A bit like the island, and the body of water it's in is often called the witch's cauldron. And then the last stalagmite worth noting is the beehive over here. This is the beehive stalagmite. Often, because it's turned a very lovely poopy brown colour, we often call him Jabba the Hutt stalagmite nowadays. But those are the main 3. Generally as well, the only other thing you need to know is about 100 years now in various forms. We use it to carry caving equipment across into the chambers just on the other side of the river. Nowadays, it's also part of a caving experience we do called Wild Wookey, where it's a slightly different tour, where they'll take you through all the extreme routes of the cave. So you abseil, you go in your boats, all these crazy things. It's a great way to do the caves if you really like doing an extreme challenge. I don't, personally, and we're going to be taking a slightly different route through. Just behind this wall of rock here. There's a tiny, tiny gap at the back that you might be able to see. This is an entrance into another chamber. So this is where they were trying to get to. So what they did is they came down here in the middle of the night because during the day we were still a showcase, so they could only come when we were closed, all the way down here, and start diving into the new chamber.
27 kilograms per wheel of cheese.
Cleaning all of the mouldy cheese off and new cheese in.
We have 2 dogs that love cheese. They would definitely like to be at there.
I think we're all here now. Welcome to the cheese tunnel. So this was made in the 70s, but we've only been having cheese here for the last 20 or so years. You can see the cheesemen hard at work down here. So our cheese is brought down here to age. It's all part of the cheddaring process. So in fact, all of the cheese wheels here are cheddar cheese from a farm in Dorset called Ford Farms. So they're wrapped in a layer of linen and soaked in lard, and that lard is what molds over, which gives the cheddar cheese its lovely cheddar taste. So there's about 27 kilograms of cheese in each of those wheels. They sit on here for 2 to 18 months to age, and then we unwrap them and we package them up. Some of them are sold in our gift shop, some of them are sold in supermarkets, some of them are sold in cheese markets in Australia. So we have a whole range of cheeses going all over the world. Some goat's cheese, some cow's milk cheese, but it's all cheddar with different types. The cheesemen here are preparing the rails for the next layers of cheese that are coming in. So this cheese on the left here has been here for only a month. It's quite new cheese, so it's only a little bit moldy. But what will happen eventually will it'll be entirely engulfed by mold. And that's a good thing. That means it'll taste really, really yummy.
How beautiful is that, guys?
I'm surprised it's this far down. Usually it doesn't.
That's really cool.
It was really nice because there was no light,
Yeah.
so it was just catching.
I
am crazy enough to, because they say like, just do it, you can. I would be crazy enough to do it.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm not good at putting long time.
Because she was reading the study, so she could.
winner chicken dinner. Well, this guy's going home paying for everyone's dinner. Last one. Right, how much did I win? I won 1. Yes. As I said in the intro, it's a beautiful place that I can't capture the atmosphere of, but it's highly, highly worth going. Just if you're ever in the area, just pop in. Just, you know, just go. They have tours multiple times throughout the day, and it's just worth your time. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons. Bye for now.